I do not pretend to go to sleep. How can I? If Anderson does not accept terms at 4, the orders are he shall be fired upon. I count 4. St. Michael chimes. I begin to hope. The heavy booming of a cannon, I sprang out of bed, and on my knees prostrate, I prayed as I have never prayed before.
The Civil War began at 4:30 a.m. on the 12th of April, 1861. General Pierre-Gustave Toutant-Beauregard ordered his Confederate gunners to open fire on Fort Sumter, at that hour only a dark shape out in Charleston Harbor. Confederate Commander Beauregard was a gunner, so skilled as an artillery student at West Point that his instructor kept him on as an assistant for another year. That instructor was Major Robert Anderson, Union commander inside Fort Sumter.
All the pent-up hatred of the past months and years is voiced in the thunder of these cannon, and the people seem almost beside themselves in the exaltation of a freedom they deem already won.
The signal to fire the first shot was given by a civilian, Edmund Ruffin, a Virginia farmer and editor, who had preached secession for 20 years. Of course, he said, I was delighted to perform the service. "34 hours later, a white flag over the fort ended the bombardment. The only casualty had been a Confederate horse. It was a bloodless opening to the bloodiest war in American history.
The first gun that was fired at Fort Sumter sounded the death knell of slavery. They who fired it were the greatest practical abolitionists this nation has produced.
April 13th. So Civil War is inaugurated at last. God defend the right.
April, Montgomery Daily Advertiser. The intelligence that Fort Sumter has surrendered to the Confederate forces yesterday sent a thrill of joy to the heart of every true friend of the South. The face of every Southern man was brighter, his step lighter, and his bearing prouder than it had been before.
In Boston, jubilant volunteers marched past Faneuil Hall eager to avenge Fort Sumter. In Baltimore, anti-Lincoln men rampaged through the streets. In Richmond, a mob marched on the State House, tore down the Stars and Stripes, and raised the Stars and Bars. There was no longer any doubt that Virginia would secede. And in New York, 100,000 people crowded Union Square, where the Sumter flag now flew. Walt Whitman, sometime poet and journalist for the Brooklyn Standard, was stunned by the news. All the past we leave behind with Sumter, he said.
Woe to those who began this war if they were not in bitter earnest. Mary Chestnut.